Hey everyone, in this video I will be breaking down American Jesus Volume 3, which is the conclusion to the American Jesus storyline. Now I was really digging this book. I gave Volume 1 and Volume 2 an 8 out of 10. I was really liking the concept. In Volume 1 we were introduced to this Jodie Christianson character. We thought he was maybe the Messiah, and in a twist we learn he is actually the Antichrist. And in Volume 2 we are introduced to Catalina, and she is actually Jesus, the Messiah returned. And Volume 3 was promising an epic confrontation between these two. Now, in Volume 3 here, will Mark Millar stick the landing and give us a satisfying conclusion, or will he kind of screw it up? We shall see. I'm really excited to talk about this one with you all and go through my final thoughts on what I thought of this conclusion. Before I dive into the story, though, I want to give an update on the Netflix adaptation of this comic series. So it's going to be a 6-episode miniseries. The storyline will now is moved from the United States to Mexico, and the title of the show will not be called American Jesus, which, by the way, I think is a really catchy title. It will instead be called The Chosen One, and we have a poster for that here. I guess it makes sense. If you're going to set it in Mexico, you can't really call it American Jesus anymore. But yeah, I think American Jesus was more catchy to me. But still, going to be very interesting to see how good this adaptation will be or not. But for now, in this video here, let's dive into the story now for American Jesus Volume 3 and see how the ending goes. American Jesus Volume 3, Revelation, written by Mark Millar, art by Peter Gross. Before we dive into the story in this volume, I want to do another timeline recap. So, in 1969, Jodie Christianson, the Antichrist, was born. In 1979, Catalina Cortez, Jesus Christ returned as a female, is born. In 1981, this is when the bulk of Volume 1 took place. Jodie Christianson was 12 years old then. His powers materialized. He initially thought he was the Messiah returned, but he later found out he was the Antichrist, and he was taken away to live with these Satanists to be trained and fulfill their prophecy. In 1992, this is when the bulk of Volume 2 took place. Catalina Cortez was 17 years old at the time, about to turn 18. She was secretly living in a compound where others kept the fact that she was Jesus returned hidden from the world. Eventually, though, she was discovered, and everyone at the compound got killed. Catalina's powers materialized, and Volume 2 ended with her saying bye to her mother and getting on a boat and going into hiding. She would spend the next several decades walking among us like Jesus did. In 2001, the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks occurred, which was a pivotal moment for the Satanists' plan. Now, I am not 100% sure when Volume 3 is taking place for their current day. It is sometime between the year 2005 and 2022. Alright, let's dive into it now. American Jesus, Revelation number 1. This issue begins long ago in biblical times. God is up there in heaven. He's trying to make Adam, the famous Adam from Adam and Eve. He's chiseling away at him, but some of the angels are not having it. They will not bow down to this new toy God was building, referring to humanity. About 1/3 of the angels were speaking of rebellion. This rebellion was led by the angel Lucifer. About 2/3 of the angels remained loyal to God, though, and this group was led by the angel Michael. Michael confronted Lucifer, suspecting him of rebellion. Lucifer told Michael, "He's forming an ape from the dust, brother. Haven't you seen it? He intends to populate the lower worlds with these things. And now it's our duty to serve these creatures? This wasn't our job." Michael replies, "Our job is whatever he tells us. You would do well to remember that." Lucifer says, "Oh, so now we're going to fight over these talking animals?" Michael responds, "This isn't about the Adam he's building. This is about you growing tired of sitting at his left hand and wanting to sit on his throne.
instead. A battle of the angels resulted, and Lucifer, who was then an angel, was cast down from heaven, along with a third of the angels that were loyal to him. Thus began the great schism. God, he ended up finishing building Adam and Eve, but Lucifer was happy to ruin God's work at every turn, as symbolized by Lucifer being a snake that told Adam and Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. God, he sent many teachers over the years to Earth, which Lucifer took pleasure in murdering. God sent his only son Jesus, but Jesus was crucified. Slowly, Lucifer and the Satanists took over the world, and now, in the current day, they have almost every country under their satanic rule. This is why God has sent his child now again, in the form of Catalina, thus setting up another rematch. We jump now to the current day. Jodie Christianson, the Antichrist from Volume 1, is now President of the United States. He is in the White House with his children, and he is telling them all about his dad, Lucifer. Jodie is pretty open that he is the Antichrist and his dad is Satan himself. Jodie explains, "Human history is just a list of God's plans being corrupted by my father, and what comes next is his biggest one yet. This is what Daddy does every day while you guys are learning in school." We have a flashback to September 11th, 2001, the morning of 9/11. Jodie is talking with his political advisor, Peter. Peter tells Jodie he should get a wife. It will look good in the papers. It's important that Jodie present an image of a typical American family. Jodie asked, "Why do I care what the public thinks? We control the voting machines." Peter replied, "True, but we need you to convince them to get on board with our microchipping program, sir. You're supposed to be the Messiah, delivering us from all the wars, plagues, and famines we're engineering. It's important you look as relatable as possible." Jodie, he gets on board with the plan. He replies, "Just make sure it's one of those sweet little Christian girls from the Midwest, someone I can corrupt. A public profile wouldn't go amiss either. Someone with her own career like an actress or a singer, plus a decent set of tits, of course." Jodie and a whole bunch of other Satanists are there to watch the planes hit the World Trade Center. Jodie gives a speech before it goes down. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the beginning of the new satanic era. We still have some countries pushing back against our plans, but that's all about to change this morning. We need an excuse to send our armies in, and the public will be begging us after this." The planes then hit, and they all celebrate, drinking champagne. A few weeks after that, a 21-year-old singer named Kelly Tyler, who is a Christian rock singer, who also had an 8-year run on a TV show, which I assume was like a Disney child star kind of situation. Well, now that she's an adult, her career is drying up, and she is in need of a change of image. She needs to be sexier with tattoos, a different attitude, and she can't sing songs about Jesus anymore. Kelly and her mother have a meeting with a man named John Amos, who promises her success, but it will require sacrifice. Kelly says she is willing to do anything. Next, we see various magazines showing Kelly Tyler's transformation from Christian child star to very sexualized young adult with hints of satanic overtones. Months after Kelly's transformation in the public, she is brought to Santa Monica, California, and Kelly participates in a satanic ceremony in John Amos's house in his basement. Kelly is brought into a room with all of these Satanists in robes. Kelly asks, "Why are their babies crying? Are they scared of me? I've done terrible things these past few months. Do you think they can tell?" John Amos replies, "No, that's just our drugs making you paranoid. The babies are crying because they're cold, but they'll stop once we cut their throats. We're going to drink their blood and eat their flesh at communion, Kelly, but everyone's going to watch you fornicate first." Kelly is then introduced to Jodie Christianson. Jodie is in a trance-like state, hosting demons within him. John Amos tells Kelly, "You have to think of this as an audition in a way, but it isn't for a movie part. You're auditioning to be the wife of the man who will wash the remains of God from the earth." Jodie and Kelly have sex while all of these Satanists watch. The baby mentioned earlier is ritualistically killed. They ask Kelly if she obediently accepts this creature inside of her, referring to the demons occupying Jodie. She replies, "Hail Satan, for I truly do. Nothing could be more of an honor." Now we fast forward again many years, back now to the current day. Kelly is married to Jodie Christianson. They have 2 kids, and she is the First Lady of the United States. Kelly and Jodie are in Silicon Valley, and are overlooking the creation of the facilities that will hold all human thoughts in the world once the world's populations are all microchipped. A scientist named Sanjay explains the process to them. He says, "When the president collapses the global economy, this will be instrumental in the new world order that rises from the ashes. After all the chaos we create, the human race should be pretty warmed up to the idea of a microchip inside of them with your COVID status, bank details, and the digital ID you'll need to function in society. It's also the interface with our new virtual reality platform that gives the human brain access to the internet's search engines. The people will all be linked in a global hive mind while we get access to the neurons in their brains. It's their souls this lets us cage when we switch this thing on. They're bound to Earth for all eternity, and God's plan for mankind is screwed before the new Christ even shows up." Kelly seems excited about the prospects. She says, "Oh, Jodie, isn't this clever? It doesn't just stop humanity reaching heaven, it gives us complete control over them. I know we own the cops and the soldiers, but I've always been scared what people would do if they found out what we've been getting up to." Later on, we see Jodie giving a speech as President of the United States to the American people on TV. Jodie says, "Do you know what they were fighting about when Rome fell? The gender of the angels. This was the big debate in the Senate 2,000 years ago when history's greatest empire was collapsing. Does that sound familiar to today? I'm not interested in the culture wars. I'm here to fix the cratering economy, win the fight with Russia, and bring an end to our cycle of endless lockdown. We need to build back better after everything we've been through, and I've laid out a blueprint to tackle these issues on top of the ongoing climate emergency." Elsewhere, we see Catalina, Jesus returned. She is talking with her mother, Luciana, in a hospital. Catalina hasn't seen her mother in 30 years. She talks about how the public and media seem to love Jodie and think he is the answer to all of their problems, not realizing, of course, that he is the one causing their problems. Luciana says, "Oh, Catalina, I'm so glad you're okay, sweetheart. How did you manage to avoid them all of these years? They had you on camera, for goodness sake." Catalina explains, "I told you, I scrubbed the tapes and made them forget. They just didn't know what we looked like anymore." One of many miracles I've enjoyed in the 30 years since I held your hand. So back in Volume 2 in the 90s, the Satanists group did find out about Catalina. But I guess with her magical Jesus powers, she mind-wiped them and made them forget. Anyway, Catalina has been walking the earth like the original Christ since then, listening to people's stories. Catalina has not liked what she has seen though. She doesn't like how humanity treats the weakest in its society. Luciana asks her daughter, "Have you been gathering an army of disciples, Catalina? Collecting the best and brightest out there to help you in this fight against the antichrist?" Catalina replies, "I don't need anyone's help, Mom. I'm not back to spread any messages either. This time, I'm here to judge." American Jesus Revelation Issue 2. In front of the White House, Jodie is drinking some wine and smoking. He looks a little depressed. An assistant named Richard tells Jodie, "Russia has fallen, Mr. President. We just got word 4 minutes ago." Jodie isn't impressed. He says, "You came all this way just to tell me that? They have an economy the size of Italy's, and their hardware looked like it fought in World War II. I know the deal. We bring democracy to the Middle East, carve up Russia, and now we're going to flatten North Korea. Wake me up when we reach China, Richard." They then start discussing their new satanic world order plans, and Jodie asks Richard, "What's in this for you? Why do you even care?" Richard replies, "Because this plan has been brewing for 300 years, and it's a privilege to serve at the front when it happens. Our people were hiding in foxholes for centuries, and now we're going to rule the world." Jodie asks, does he really think that they can win when Christ comes back? Richard answers, "Of course we can. Your father is more powerful than God. Look at all the suffering in the world. God never answers prayers. Look what we got just for pledging our allegiance." Richard, he then gestures how they are both in the White House, all thanks to Satan. At that moment, in front of the White House, we see Jodie's mother, Martha Christianson. She has come to visit. Jodie's wife, Kelly, is not very welcoming. She asks, "What the hell are you doing here?" Martha tells her to get out of her way. Jodie isn't answering any of her calls. She knows that her son is depressed, and she demands to speak with him. Martha, she storms her way into the White House and over to the Oval Office. The grandchildren are there, but Jodie has apparently gone missing. One of the kids explains, "Daddy made himself disappear. He said there's no point trying to look for him because nobody's going to find him." So Jodie has gone off the radar. The president is missing. Where has Jodie gone? Jodie, he went back home to Peoria, Illinois, where we saw him grow up back in Volume 1. In Peoria, Jodie runs into Father Tom O'Higgins, who was a major character back in Volume 1. The two of them talk about how Jodie is president and how Father Tom is getting up there in age. He's 81, but he's still working. Jodie, he has ran away from his responsibilities because he seems to have second thoughts about the trajectory his life is taking now. And perhaps he is not as enthusiastic about shepherding in the end of the world as the other Satanists in his group are. Jodie tells Father Tom, "I'm just a little overwhelmed. There's so few people I can really be myself with now. Nobody treats me like a normal person." Father Tom asks, "What about your mother? She always struck me as someone who would keep you pretty grounded." Jodie replies, "Oh, she definitely keeps me grounded, all right. I just need to get away for a while, back to a place where everything made sense." Jodie says no one knows him like they do here. They then talk about Maggie Kane. Maggie was the girl that Jodie had a crush on back in Volume 1 when they were kids. They kind of had a flirtatious relationship. They might have even been boyfriend and girlfriend had Jodie's life gone differently, and had he not been taken away to be trained by the Satanists. When Jodie, much later on in his life, ran for president, Maggie was so excited. She put posters in all the windows in her house, and she knocked on everyone's door. She sadly died in a fire a few years ago. Father Tom said that Maggie, she had such faith in Jodie. Jodie starts crying. He says he is not what everyone thinks he is. They are saying he is a messiah, but that isn't true. He wasn't taken away as a kid to be trained to save the world. He found out he is actually something bad, and he doesn't think he can handle it anymore. Jodie says, "I was put on Earth to enslave humanity and face the hosts of heaven in the Battle of Armageddon." Father Tom says what Jodie is saying is madness. Jodie, he shakes Father Tom and tells him, "It's no crazier than any of this shit. Do you think I'd be sitting here crying if I was really the Son of God? I've done such terrible things in my life while they burned the goodness out of me. The plans they've got for ordinary people are demonic. These guys think they're gonna win and crucify Christ all over again, but they haven't a goddamn clue. It doesn't matter how many microchips they implant in everyone. We're going to get our asses kicked when the new Christ comes on the scene. It's already written in the Gospel of St. John, and he's been right about everything so far." Father Tom tries to give words of encouragement, but Jodie says that Father Tom is not getting it. He yells, "I'm the frickin' Antichrist, Father, don't you get it? I'm here to fight God, and I've never been so scared in my life." Jodie asks if Father Tom will hear his confession before the people come to get him. Father Tom says sure, he can. They go back to his church to do this properly. In the church, Jodie says it feels so weird to be back here again. Father Tom and Jodie sit. Father Tom does the sign of the cross, and Jodie begins talking. Jodie, he confesses to all of his many sins over the years. He talks for hours, telling Father Tom everything. In the end, Father Tom is shocked. He says, "My God, I can't believe what you've been through, that the Lord would allow these things to even happen in the world." Jodie asks if Father Tom is disgusted with him, but Father Tom says no. Your sins are not for me to judge, but if you're sorry for all these things you've done, you really do have God's forgiveness. They got you when you were a little boy. You didn't know what you were doing. You just need to forgive yourself and know that the Lord has a plan for us all. Jodie, he hears a helicopter flying in the air above the church. He says, "They found me." They've tracked Jodie down. A SWAT team storms into the church. Father Tom tells Jodie before they take Jodie away, "Just remember, Jodie, that I believe in you. No matter what you told me here, my faith was lost, but you brought it back. The Lord told me you were something special. He told me you were going to save the world, and I had to pray for you every day. He never lies, Jodie. Just remember that. There's more going on here than any of us understand." The SWAT team slams Father Tom to the ground, and they take Jodie away. Elsewhere in Vatican City, Rome, Catalina asks to talk to the Pope. She expresses how disappointed she is with the opulence of this place. High walls and endless riches. This isn't the church that she told Peter to build. The security there tell Catalina to leave, but Catalina uses her Jesus magic powers, and the security guards, they somehow feel the presence of Christ within her, and they can't refuse her. The security go and get the Pope for her. When the Pope descends the stairs to see Catalina, all of the cardinals and other holy figures are there kneeling before her. The Pope asks, "Who is this woman? What the hell is going on here?" Catalina responds, "Are you really so divorced from your faith that you don't recognize my features? Perhaps it's the flare from your gold and your jewels blinding you to the truth. Did you really think this would please me? I'm on Wall Street now, melting the bull like the false god the Israelites worshipped when Moses went to Mount Sinai. I'm draining every penny from the bank accounts of these gamblers, reducing their wealth to absolute zero. Now I'm in Brussels, burning down the European Parliament, designed by witches to honor the unfinished Tower of Babel. This monstrosity was built to provoke God, a step in the plan for their world government, and a single rule by the man in the White House. But this is the one that pains me the most. The palace here, built in my father's name, that runs on corruption and greed. Did you really think you wouldn't be judged for this empire? Did you forget I was coming back one day? All gone in a gentle breeze. Catalina, with her powers, makes the Vatican Church crumble to sand. All of the cardinals and the Pope are naked, their clothes also turned into sand. Satellites in the sky pick up Catalina. They will report her presence back to Jodie. Catalina tells the Pope, "Tell the president he has 24 hours. I'll be waiting in the city of Megiddo. Horns will blow, the dead will rise, and anyone who ever lived is about to be held account for their actions." He thought he had years to prepare for this battle, but I've seen enough to cast my judgment on the world. The world ends tomorrow. American Jesus, Revelation, Issue 3, The Conclusion. We begin with another flashback, this one to 1969, where we learn the origin of Jodie Christianson's birth. Jodie's mother, Martha Christianson, well, Martha's parents sold their daughter out to the Satanists so that they could get some money, a good paying job, and a nice new car, and in exchange, Martha would give birth to the Antichrist. We see Martha Christianson then giving birth to Jodie. She is in the middle of a drawn pentagram on the floor, and she is surrounded by Satanists. Martha, she does not seem into all the Satanist stuff herself. She's not a true believer. She is only in this situation because her parents forced it on her. The Satanists tell Martha to pick up her son, Jodie. Martha doesn't want to. She knows he's the Antichrist. She yells, "You bastards! This isn't a baby, it's not even human!" But the Satanists tell her, "The father wasn't human, but you certainly are, and poor little Jodie looks human enough to me. He's crying because he's frightened and wondering where his mother is. How can you sit there and watch him in distress? Look, if you don't pick him up, we don't care, we'll just make another one. You're the one who's been carrying him for the past 9 months, but pick him up and let him drink from your breasts, or we crush his skull and start again." Martha asks, "Why are you doing this to me?" The Satanists tell her, "Because the baby needs a humble start and a nice, normal family if he's going to be relatable. We've got grand plans for your little boy, but he needs someone to raise him like only a mother can." Martha, she reluctantly agreed. She is handed Jodie and lets him feed from her. Martha despises the Satanists, but Jodie is still her child, and she is going to try and raise him as good and as right as she can. Back to the current day once again. Outside of Air Force One, we see Jodie Christianson. He is told about Catalina, how she is Jesus returned, and how she is waiting for him to battle in Megiddo. Before Jodie can get on the plane and leave, his mother Martha yells for her son, "Jodie!" She manages to say to him before he leaves, "I just wanted to see you before you left. Promise me you'll be careful." And Jodie responds to his mom, "I will, Mom. I promise." So what is this Megiddo place that Catalina is waiting for Jodie at? Megiddo is an archaeological site in Israel that has been identified as the location of Armageddon as described in the book of Revelation, where the final battle between good and evil will take place. So Jodie, in Air Force One, flies over to Megiddo. And in Megiddo, Catalina is waiting above some ancient ruins there. And a whole crowd of people are watching from down below. Eventually, Jodie's plane lands. And Jodie, he travels over to Catalina, and the two of them square off and talk. Jodie says, "Hello, Catalina." Catalina responds, "So we meet at last." Jodie says to her, "The final battle in the city of Megiddo, exactly as prophesied all those years ago." The two of them, they stare each other down as many watch from below. Jodie says he's been waiting for this moment for so long. She looks different than he expected. Catalina responds, almost joking, "You'd have found me pretty quickly if I'd kept the beard and sandals." Jodie asks, "This is all happening sooner than I expected. Is there a reason for that?" Catalina replies, "Why wait? I've walked the earth and spoken to everyone already. I know who lives and I know who dies when we open the book of judgment. There's no point putting everyone through these horrors that you were planning." Jodie explains their plans to the Satanists. He says, "We'd already started the microchipping and the new global currency. 1/3 of the angels fell from heaven that night all those many years ago, but we've been breeding out there in the dark ever since, and our numbers are higher than yours now, I suspect. You won the fight the first time we came to blows, but I think things could be different now if it was waged again against an old god and his shrunken guard and all those tired angels and archangels." Catalina says, "I'm sure we'll manage." Jodie continues, The idea was that we'd lead the charge and burn heaven to the ground, slaughtering your father and imprisoning the human race until the end of time. But now, I don't want to. I just don't have it in me, and I don't know what to do about it." Catalina is surprised and shocked. She says, "What?" Jodie, he doesn't seem to want to go through with their plans anymore. Jodie explains why his father, the angel Lucifer, originally rebelled. He says, The schism happened because I didn't want to serve these things that ate and shit and screwed like animals. I hated the flaws your father built into humans, but now I see the beauty of their imperfections. I look at my children and see their love, and how they learn and expand their consciousness every day. I look at my mother and I see a devotion that burns brighter than the sun, no matter how much shit I've given her over the years, no matter what I've done to disappoint her. I look at my wife and I see a woman who knows every awful thing I've ever done, but who would still be willing to die for her family. I see their mistakes, and I realize that this is how their awareness is being elevated, and I marvel at how far they've come. The Lord was right, and I was wrong. The human race really is his greatest creation, and I should have been honored to help them towards enlightenment. So Jodie, he has kind of had a change of heart. However, in an odd twist, Catalina has had a change of heart herself. She replies, "Well, I'm afraid I disagree. I walked the earth for 30 years and saw nothing but man's greed and cruelty. Half the world getting fat as the other half starved. I saw murder and violence over coins and land, small betrayals and huge ones. Degeneracy so commonplace no one even notices anymore. I begged for help and everyone ignored me. All my teachings lost to history. The book I left them ridiculed and mocked. But worst of all was their compliance with your plot. They turned away from my message and embraced yours with such enthusiasm I can only feel embarrassed by their cowardice and unashamed stupidity. My father created them to join him in heaven, but they're all too busy looking at their damn smartphones. They deserve what I've got planned for them." We then see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse like giants in the sky, towering above them in the distance. Jodie, seeing them, asks, "Is that who I think it is?" Catalina answers, "4 of the seraphim. I told them to wipe this place clean. I've met the world and all their forefathers, and they're even worse than the last time. We need to destroy them and start again." Jodie, he actually begs her to stop. She tells him not to waste his time trying to convince her. But Jodie, he continues and says, "But don't you see what this has all been about? Don't you understand what this entire experience has been for? To teach you fallibility. Think about what happened when God heard about the uprising all those many years ago. The angel he loved most, Lucifer, had rebelled against him and was cast out of heaven for all eternity. A perfect being never makes mistakes. He doesn't know greed or pride, and so his reaction is absolute. Lucifer and his followers were lost forever, but through you becoming flesh, God can finally understand what was going through my father's mind. He can empathize. You didn't just come here to save mankind, Catalina. You were sent here to save us all. Now the Lord knows what it's like to make mistakes and all these things he could never grasp before. Through you, he can appreciate remorse and finally forgive us for our mistakes." Catalina asks, "Is that all you want here, to be forgiven for your actions?" Jodie gets on his knees and says, "More than anything in the world, we are truly sorry." And Catalina forgives Jodie and, kind of on behalf of her father God, forgives Lucifer as well. She tells Jodie, "Then tell your father we've missed our old friend. Tonight, he'll be with us in paradise." Jodie and Catalina hug, and in the sky we see God and Lucifer hug as well. We have a flashback to 1969. Martha Christianson tells her baby Jodie, "I'm going to love you like no child has been loved before, and I'm going to make you into the best kid I know. They're going to tempt you with so many terrible things, but I'm going to teach you right from wrong." In the current day, Jodie and his mother are talking to Jodie's kids. Jodie's kids ask, "So what happened to our grandfather, Daddy? Did he go back to heaven with all the fallen angels?" "Yeah, what happened to him? Did he and God become friends again, or are they still not talking?" Jodie asks his mom, "What do you think, Mom? Do you think my father swallowed his pride?" Martha responds, "Oh yes, I think he went to live somewhere nice, and he's happier than he's ever been, Jodie." Up in heaven, Lucifer is there in front of God again, having finally returned to heaven to seek God's forgiveness. God tells Lucifer, "Come, sit at my left hand again like old times." On Earth, some true believers of Catalina ask her, "What's going to happen once you've saved us, Catalina? Yeah, what will you do once we're all in heaven and nobody's left down here?" Catalina smiles and says, "Why, I will sit on my Father's right." Martha kisses her grandchildren goodnight and says, "God bless," while standing beside Jodie. And with Armageddon averted, and Lucifer and God pals again, we end the story of American Jesus.
Alright, so that was the conclusion of American Jesus. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if this ending paid off or not. So I am a little bit mixed on this ending. Now, on the positive side, we did have an ending. It wrapped up the story in a nice little bow, and everyone was pretty happy, so it's a happy send-off, which I guess is good. However, my negatives are the overall story was just a little bit too quick in this volume. I feel like there's a lot more that could have been done and expanded upon. We were promised an epic confrontation, a battle between Catalina and Jodie and the Satanists and Catalina's good side, and that never really happened. It was more so just a conversation between the two of them, which is less exciting. I'm not buying the conclusion of Jodie kind of becoming good and wanting to atone for his father Lucifer and get Lucifer back in God's good books and wrap this all up really quickly and nicely. I don't know. I didn't think it was done in the best possible way. And also in this book, there's still a lot of that Millar shocking for the sake of being shocking stuff that he is very well known for. So I didn't really love it, although it's not bad. I'm really on the fence here. But after the build-up of Volume 1 and 2, which I liked quite a bit, I was a little bit disappointed in the way it ended. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And my next video, I will be covering a book called 8 Billion Genies, and that one's a real banger, so I will see you all then there for that.